Hey guys, welcome to Crimson Ed Talks. My name is Jamie Beaton and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Crimson Education. And today it gives me immense pride and joy to be interviewing one of the legends of Crimson, one of our first students, really, in the whole world, Soraya, who is a fellow Kiwi from New Zealand, from down under, and has gone on quite a remarkable education adventure. We're going to be drilling into her early days in high school and college, what it was like going to New York, how that took her into the world of ed tech, and the fast-paced career trajectory she's been on, which has been unreal on the world stage and really had amazing impact on actually many other students too, globally. So to get things started, Soraya, do you want to give everyone a bit of an intro to yourself and where this all began? How did the journey get started?
Sure. So my name is Soraya. As you mentioned, I'm half Iranian, half New Zealander. I was born in Dubai, moved back and forth between Dubai and New Zealand a whole lot growing up. And I was always really into school. I come from an extended family that's very, very creative. And so no one like my parents hadn't gone to university, and I'd never actually met anyone who'd gone to an Ivy League. But I saw Legally Blonde when I was 7 years old and decided that was the path for me. Um, and much to my surprise, when I was going through the process of applying to college, my mom actually showed me a letter I'd written to Reese Witherspoon when I was 7, telling her that I was going to study in America, have a chihuahua, and be a vegetarian. And so far, we're 3 for 3. Haven't gone to law school yet, but there's time. And I always knew that I wanted to study at one of these universities. Dubai at the time and my small town in New Zealand were not places where I was used to people being so like excited about school and the love of learning. And my first real taste of that was going to Dubai College and King's in high school, but really nothing prepared me for the kind of environment that I would graduate into. I studied anthropology and Middle Eastern studies at Columbia. I got a scholarship with Crimson's help, and it really, really changed my life. And I would say that actually, Jamie, meeting you was one of the most transformative experiences, because it gave me the two things I value most, which is my education and my career. So yeah, and between all those things, I managed to start working for Crimson once I got to uni. I was so touched by the experience that I had that I really, really wanted to help other students get access to the education that I was getting, and joined full time in the beginning of my senior year to bring our business to the Middle East. And it's been sort of a wild journey, a wild decade, really, 9 years at Crimson. And between that, I've managed to find pockets of time to explore other interests and passions as well, which has been just like really fun.
And, Soraya is very humble, but Soraya today oversees our India, Middle East, UK, many other regions, some of our biggest new growth projects. She manages people who are, I think, more than double her age, probably actually a lot more than double her age, and in some cases. And she is been a massive driver of Crimson's massive global international growth. Many of these markets she's launched into, Soraya was the first boots on the ground, and now we're the market leader in many of them. So it's definitely been a wild and exciting ride.
You're
And
too kind.
I remember when it all began with a bit of SAT tutoring back in the K Road. Amazing throwback to the OG days. Alrighty,
Yeah.
so I guess let's drill into some of these incredible experiences. So I guess you mentioned the Legally Blonde, and it's really funny because we joke a little bit, but actually many students are inspired by these types of pop culture references to the Ivy League schools. I guess what motivated you first to think about going to these Ivy League schools? Why was that so important to you philosophically? And then what led you to settle on Columbia? Tell us that story.
I genuinely loved school. I genuinely loved it. And then once you're at university, you actually get to choose your subjects. So it's like maximized to 1,000,000, because you're choosing the classes that you love and that sound most interesting to you. I wouldn't have been able to explain what anthropology was when I was in high school. But the great thing about US universities, you get that year to explore and try things out before committing yourself to a major. So I really wanted to be in an environment where everyone would feel equally and was as excited and motivated to learn as I was. And I think growing up between Dubai and New Zealand, I'd experienced the small town and also a really cosmopolitan environment. So I sort of wanted to be somewhere quite international. And I wanted to be, in rooms where everyone else was smarter than me. And to go to a university like Columbia and then just have everyone else be like a genius in their field was so exciting, and just such a huge contrast from the smaller environments where I'd grown up. When I came to choosing Columbia, I think New York, of course, was a massive attraction for me. I really, really just was drawn to it. Before university, I'd had the chance to go there for 3 months, where I was working in a pie shop, but trying to get to the campus every day to attend events and, go to lectures and just like meet people as much as I could. And this was during my gap year. I'd taken a year and a half before university to do things like improve my SAT score and, work on my applications. And then Columbia offered me a scholarship, so it was really hard to turn down. It ended up actually being the cheapest option for me.
Incredible. And, one thing I wanted to ask actually, as you spoke, you mentioned the story of literally going to Columbia early, working in this pie shop, getting up to campus, meeting people. For many, particularly introverts out there, or even just probably typical people, that sounds literally terrifying. One of your magic skills, I think, Soraya, is, your skills as an extrovert, as a people person, are off the charts. Can you give a bit of sort of, everyone out there, was this always the way you were, forged sort of in high school and stuff? Have you built out these skills? And any tips for someone out there who thinks, wow, that's some serious hustle?
I mean, I think anyone that I've ever admired has gotten to where they've gotten to by like being in rooms where they had no business being in and just doing it quite confidently. And like, if you do that, you are going to be told no, or, you're going to have the door shut in your face like 19 times out of 20, but you only need that one. And like, that's the story of Crimson too. We were all like 18 and 19 years old when we were building this thing. And that's how we had to do it. And so I remember when I would go to these lectures, I was very much trying to ask as many questions and make myself heard. And even at university, that's something I did. Probably annoyed a lot of other students, but I asked a question in every class. And, at the end of the semester, the professors know you. So how did that begin? I did, and my parents were involved in kind of media. So I did have the experience of growing up doing a lot of acting and being in front of cameras, and then did theater at school and everything. So that did prepare me well. And I would say, even if you don't want to go into the arts, students should really consider doing things like speech and drama, or anything that's going to get them confident speaking in front of people. I also did debate and Model UN at school. And I think this is incredibly useful. I continued it in university, and I can say we used to have private recruiting events from, banks that would come and just speak to the debate team. We used to have a lot of opportunities because companies did want people who, A, were good communicators, B, sort of quick thinkers, which you have to be to do competitive debate, and then also the ability to sort of empathize with either side of an argument, to be able to really understand different stakeholders. That's something you practice in debate. And it's just going to be, I can't think of a career where having that wouldn't be useful. So if students can get involved in debate and Model UN, even if they're not at a level where they would want to be competitive, they absolutely should. It's going to help you with interviews, going to help you with your career. It's going to help you just speaking up in class, finding opportunities. And then I think also you just got to be really bold. I remember when I was in college once, and I was quite involved with like activism and social causes. And I had a sort of mentor from JP Morgan who would sort of bring me to these events and introduce me and help me sort of get connected with different companies and stuff. And he took me to a charity event once, and there was someone I wanted to speak to from World Vision. Like I really wanted to talk to this girl. And I can remember this so clearly, but I was just a college student, had not much to say. But I saw that she had dropped a business card. So I took the business card. The next day I messaged her and I said, "Oh, we met at this event yesterday and we had a chat. You told me to call you. Do you want to have coffee?" And she was like, "Oh, yeah, I remember." So just like things like that, you just got to be bold. Worst case, someone tells you no.
I love it.
Best case, you get a meeting out of it.
Yeah, for sure. And, honestly, you mentioned earlier, this was sort of the story of Crimson, but how we first got going with, legends like the late Julian Robertson, very much off the same ilk, sending a cold email, and then sort of barreling in and really trying to look for good opportunities, and every so often they can turn into crazy life-changing adventures.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so I guess for many folks listening to this, I think they're thinking, okay, well, we've heard this incredible success story of Columbia to the world stage, but let's give a couple of insights in terms of that high school journey. So any key lessons you would share to current high school students aiming for these top universities? And then how exactly did Crimson play a role in that part of your adventure specifically?
Okay, so this is really interesting. I didn't have much exposure to these kind of universities. I didn't know a whole lot about it. My parents didn't really know about it. So I was kind of guessing blindly at the time. And I had sort of heard that you need to be a well-rounded student. And so I took that to mean be involved in everything. So I was in like 2 competitive sports teams at King's, debate, all the theater stuff, jazz band, choir, chapel choir, orchestra, rock band, everything. So when I first interfaced with Crimson, I suppose I thought that would make me a strong candidate. And the kind of feedback I got was that actually this sort of lacks direction. And it's much better to focus on 2 or 3 areas, what we now call being well lopsided as opposed to well-rounded. And that's going to, help to distinguish you a lot. And at the time, I was also very interested in the arts. And although I wasn't sure that I wanted to have a career in art, I did have a lot of, that was sort of the unifying factor of all the things that I was involved in. And so I'd come across Crimson in December. So December 2012 or December 2013. And sort of 1 month before the deadline. So this is when I decided to take a gap year. I applied to an internship at the Hermitage Museum in Russia, went to St. Petersburg for a few months. I worked as an au pair in Italy, and then there built up my art portfolio. And then I also was teaching English in Vietnam and then sitting my SATs. And so what I ended up applying with was a profile that was very centered around the arts. And I really want students to think about what their hook is. And it doesn't mean that you're bound to that, because unless you're applying to an engineering program, then you can actually apply undeclared, or you can, change your majors. That really, really, really helped me. It's more focus, more direction, and then you stand out. And I think also you want to be strategic about this, because if you're a male student applying to Stanford economics, you're one of thousands, right? But if you're a male student applying to and you're showing an interest in education, that's the field that you want to work in, it's already quite unique and interesting. And you can't game the system, because you do have to show your genuine interest. But these are useful kind of strategic tips to keep in mind as you're thinking about candidacy development.
Thinking a bit about how to get the most out of those, 4, I think in your case, 3 years at Columbia, given your supercharged academics. When you think about that, journey, any tips for how you get the best out of that Ivy League experience? Because there are some folks who might turn up, they might take the regular classes, they might not go to so many clubs. But my sense, seeing you in action, through your years in Columbia, in Manhattan, was you really juiced this thing, for its life. You really got every last piece of experience out of this. And I know you, for example, lead the Alumni Association or a senior in the Middle East region, and, various things like this. So give some tips out there to folks. Okay, they go through Crimson, they land the Ivy League, and we've now had 1,000 of these Ivy League offers. What do they do next? And what are some of those pro tips from you, Soraya?
Okay, so imagine this. I'm coming from a town in New Zealand with 15,000 people, Hawke's Bay. That's where I spent most of my time in New Zealand, or Dubai, pre it becoming Dubai as we know it. So these are small, small, small environments. So I get to Columbia and I'm like, oh my God. And New York City, oh my God, wow. I really wanted to, as you said, juice absolutely everything. So I joined a huge amount of clubs to begin with. And this is natural because you're going to drop off. I did belly dance, vegan society, debate, blockchain society, entrepreneurship society, everything. The only thing I didn't do was student government, which I quite regret. And that's going to be a good way for you to meet people, meet like-minded friends. And I would say most students are really finding their friend group for the first 2 years, unless you get sort of really lucky with your first roommates or something like that. I really, at Columbia, we had the core curriculum. So you had to do like literature, humanities, you had to do frontiers of science, three quant credits or three quant classes. And I found creative ways to satisfy those requirements. So, for example, I had done, you have to do masterpieces of Western music as a core class requirement. I'd already done musical studies growing up, so I chose to do masterpieces of Indian music. And then same with art, instead of Western art, because I'd done art history as an A level, I did it East Asian art. Then you could also satisfy some requirements through study abroad programs. So for my science requirement, I actually did a conservation research program in Brazil in the Atlantic rainforest, which the university funded. So we were actually in the Atlantic rainforest. We were the first 12 people in the world to see a baby harpy eagle, which is like an extremely endangered species. And, we're living in the forest. I also did my language requirement by studying Arabic in Jordan, and I lived with a Palestinian refugee family there. And then the second part of the program was migration, displacement, and diaspora seminar in Paris, where I lived with a Moroccan family there. So like really, really trying to like maximize what I was able to learn, how I was able to learn. And it was actually while I was in Paris that I started doing volunteer work with the refugee community there, because it was 2016. So this was the height of the refugee crisis. And the family that I was staying with lived right around where a lot of the like homeless refugees who had just arrived were congregating. And actually that specific experience really took me on a journey, because I ended up taking 6 months off and doing research and volunteering around refugee camps in Europe and the Middle East, and then started a company, like a tech startup based on that, which I worked on for the next few years. Got to be part of IBM's inaugural blockchain accelerator. We won the Columbia Innovation Award. We did the CTA Startup of the Year. We were semifinalists, the Holt Prize semifinalists. Like, so a real journey. And then that actually led me to writing a book. I wrote an anthology of stories and recipes from refugee homes, which is a fundraiser for providing essential aid to refugees to this day. Got published. And so that was a really fun thing to do while at university. Just being at that university and the network that you have there is pretty amazing. In addition to that, I had been like, throughout high school, I discovered what drop shipping was, and this was how I got my pocket money. I was importing first like shoes from Korea and selling them to my classmates in New Zealand. Then I did the same with a food website in New York while I was a student, and through that, got to be invited to the UAE mission to the United Nations, where we would discuss youth issues. It was part of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals Media Zone. Got to do guest lectures on the refugee crisis at Berkeley and CUNY. So super got amongst it.
Wow. And I think, as I hear the story, for anyone thinking about Soraya's journey, I really do think this is like the quintessential, Ivy League experience. Soraya began, in the Hawke's Bay, and I'm a Kiwi as well. And basically, this is a part of the country where there aren't that many kids thinking about going overseas.
There aren't that many kids.
Education hard. Yeah. That's true. Yeah, you swing for the fences. You land the big leagues at Columbia, but then when you get there, you don't stop. That's really when the world begins. And for you and all those opportunities, then you really ran through it. So, very inspiring, and I'm sure many students listening to this will be motivated to work just a little bit harder after hearing the story. And I'm sure actually many of our current students at many of these Ivy League schools will listen to this and think, "Man, I need to join some more clubs. I need to get my butt moving."
Yeah, I mean, why not? There's never any other time in your life where your entire like goal and entire objective is to learn and experience. Like that will never happen again in the same way. It hopefully will always happen. We want to do continuous learning, but it's just like such a particularly unique time in your life before you have a family and after you leave your home environment that you gotta just like, get all the marrow out of the bone.
Love it. Gotta get that marrow. Alrighty. Well, amazing stuff, Soraya. Thanks so much. Wonderful to have you on here. And as always, an incredibly inspiring story. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Good luck to everyone.